Reemerge in Cheating Story Lab. Take a moment to comment on your location prior to immersion. Today's narrative underscores the reality that the one by your side might be an enigma. It's often said that marriage is unification, yet I discovered some opt for merely a portion of the contract, rarely their part. The person you assume knows best could conceal the deepest of secrets. Upon matrimony with Leona, I was convinced I was tying knots with my confidant, my lifelong companion. We've been inseparable for nearly 3 years, a bond not born out of passion's tempest, but a steadfast connection rooted in mutual values and heartfelt affection. Our relationship wasn't flawless, but whose is? Our physical closeness was not intense or fiery. Rather, it was comforting, constant, and organic between two individuals who genuinely cherished one another. We expressed affection, shared laughter, discussed our dreams for the future. Initially, I believed marriage would strengthen our bond and establish a solid base for a beautiful shared future. In retrospect, there were indicators I overlooked or chose to ignore. Occasionally, she appeared detached during intimate encounters as if her thoughts were elsewhere. She had casually expressed that physical intimacy seemed overvalued in relationships, but I dismissed it as differing views on romance. The wedding was breathtaking, and she looked content, even radiant. Family and friends celebrated with us, and as we danced at the reception, I felt like the happiest man alive. She murmured her love for me, and I trusted those words implicitly. The transformations began soon after our honeymoon. At first, they were so slight I barely registered them. In the month post our wedding, she subtly distanced herself, actions that now seem calculated in retrospect. It began with seemingly plausible excuses, a headache here, exhaustion from work there. Given her recent promotion prior to the wedding, I convinced myself it was merely stress from the new roles. Perhaps it was the transition of living together full-time, despite our previous shared living. However, as weeks morphed into months, the excuses multiplied and became more complex. She was constantly fatigued, overwhelmed with stress, preoccupied by work concerns. When I attempted to initiate any form of physical intimacy, even a simple cuddle on the couch, she'd stiffen up as if I breached some unseen boundary. I began doubting myself. Was I being too demanding? Was I not granting her sufficient time to adapt to our new marital status? I endeavored to be more tolerant and empathetic. I arranged romantic dinners, gave her flowers, attempted to recreate our past moments during courtship, yet nothing seemed to work, even causing irritation instead. After 3 months of marriage, I could no longer overlook it. One evening, I found her in our bedroom, lost in her phone and sporting the detached look I'd been seeing increasingly. "Leona," I said, sitting on the bed's edge, "we need to discuss something." She didn't lift her gaze from the screen. "What's up?" "Us. This distance between us. We haven't been intimate for over a month, and even before that it was infrequent at best. This isn't typical for newlyweds." It was then she looked at me with an expression I had never seen from her before, cold, almost hostile. She stood up slowly, walked towards the doorway, and turned back to face me. When she spoke, her voice was robotic, as if reciting lines from a memorized script. "My body, my choice," she said. She retreated, locked the door on me, and remained inside for what seemed like endless minutes. That evening marked my first night sleeping on our home's couch, a habit that persisted. The following weeks found me attempting various strategies. I tactfully proposed discussions when she felt ready, granted her solitude fearing I'd been overbearing, and suggested marriage counseling, hoping an impartial mediator could facilitate resolution of our troubles. However, her reaction to the counseling idea was striking. She didn't merely decline, she became hostile. "Our marriage is flawless," she asserted angrily. "The problem lies with you. You can't accept that I don't owe you anything just because we're wed, yet the problem extended beyond our relationship's intimacy." Small, seemingly insignificant alterations occurred, which collectively painted a concerning image. She ceased wearing her wedding ring at home and donned it only when we were in public. She frequently remained late at work without providing reasons. And when I'd inquire about her day, she'd offer vague, rehearsed-sounding replies. Her phone was perpetually face down and on silent. She opted to sleep in the guest room, attributing it to my snoring despite never complaining of this issue during our 3 years of dating or first month of marriage. What troubled me most was her shift in behavior, treating me less like a spouse and more like an acquaintance she barely tolerated. Cordial but distant, we appeared as mere roommates sharing a space out of necessity rather than desire. The tipping point occurred on a Sunday morning, our 4th month into marriage. Leona had departed early, supposedly to visit the office for work-related tasks. She had left her laptop exposed on the kitchen counter, an action she rarely took nowadays. I wasn't spying, at least not deliberately. I was merely trying to close it and move it aside to prepare breakfast. However, as my hand approached the screen, a chat notification appeared, its preview visible. Alone made my stomach plummet. Rest assured, he knows our arrangement. I'm just maintaining appearances until our legal matters are resolved. My hands trembled as I opened the message thread. What awaited me there shattered every belief I held about my marriage, my wife, and myself. For months, she had been engaged in a conversation with a man named Derek, communications that extended even before our wedding. The dialogue was graphic, encompassing both emotional and physical aspects. Yet it was the calculated nature of their exchanges that was most disturbing. In message after message, her tactics were meticulously outlined with chilling precision. She had never intended to have a genuine marriage with me. Based on her own statements, I was financially secure and posed no issues during what she referred to as her transition phase. She penned this to Derek. He's remarkably trusting, bordering on pitiful. He truly believes this is about me acclimating to married life. Meanwhile, I'm accumulating evidence for when I file my case. Another message revealed a clever strategy. The notion of my body, my choice, renders him unable to argue against it without appearing controlling or monstrous. It serves as an excellent defense. Furthermore, her words became increasingly chilling. After the divorce is finalized, I'll have accumulated enough funds for a fresh start with you. He earns well, and I've been meticulous in creating the paper trail I need. As I scrolled through months of messages, each one felt like another blow to my stomach. It turned out she wasn't just being unfaithful, but had been running a long-term deception, with our marriage as the focal point. The word legally in her initial message kept resonating in my mind. Upon further investigation, I uncovered a more dire situation than anticipated. Examining our combined accounts, I discovered recurring transfers I hadn't approved, each small enough to evade my individual scrutiny, yet accumulating collectively into thousands of dollars transferred to an account solely in her name. It appeared she had been surreptitiously extracting funds from our shared account. Methodically, she established a personal fund while painting herself as a victim of financial control. I also discovered credit card applications filed under my name that I hadn't endorsed. Fortunately, these attempts to incur debt in my name were denied due to inconsistencies in the application forms. Simultaneously, she was attempting to accrue debt under my name while depleting our joint resources. Initially, I chose not to confront her immediately, but instead, prepared as if for a war, gathering evidence by screenshotting every message and conversation thread. I presented bank statements proving the unwarranted transactions. I recorded the sequence of her behavioral alterations, correlating them with communications to Derek. The following day, I contacted a legal professional specialized in marital fraud and financial misconduct cases. My attorney, upon reviewing the evidence, informed me that this was not merely infidelity, but rather calculated deceit with potential financial consequences. She wasn't just being unfaithful. She had been plotting to deceive me financially even before our wedding. We prepared a separation contract, but my lawyer advised caution. If she had larger plans in the works, we needed to allow her to reveal them. Currently, we possess evidence of her affair and unauthorized transfers, but if she files first with fabricated claims, we'll have greater power. It was excruciating, knowing what I knew while maintaining a facade of normalcy. However, I relied on my lawyer's strategy. 2 weeks post-work, I returned home to find divorce documents on the kitchen counter, methodically set like a dinner setting. She was absent, merely leaving papers and a note stating her temporary stay with a friend. As I sifted through the filing, it felt as if I was being stabbed over and over again. The document alleged emotional neglect, financial manipulation, and even insinuated emotional abuse. She was requesting spousal maintenance, half of all shared assets, and compensation for emotional distress. The most infuriating aspect was her account. In the filing, I was portrayed as coercing physical intimacy, disregarding her stated boundaries, controlling finances, and creating a hostile home environment that necessitated protection. She had manipulated every dialogue we'd had, every instance of confusion or annoyance on my part, transforming them into supposed proof of misconduct. The court date arrived, and as Leona entered accompanied by her attorney, she convincingly portrayed the role of a traumatized spouse. She chose a modest dress, applied minimal makeup, and avoided eye contact with me, appearing scared to look at me. Upon her turn to speak, she delivered an award-worthy monologue. She spoke in a shaky, quiet voice about feeling endangered in our marriage, about my unreasonable expectations, and about her efforts to preserve the union amidst my domineering conduct. She portrayed me as a man who couldn't accept no, who persistently pressured her and who made her feel like a captive in her own home. Admittedly, had I not known the facts, I might have been swayed by her account. Indeed, she was that convincing. My lawyer allowed her to narrate her entire story uninterruptedly. Then, when it was our turn, he rose with a straightforward manila folder. "Your Honor," he stated, "we possess proof that disproves every statement made by the plaintiff today." The most satisfying and emotionally draining moment of my life ensued as my attorney systematically presented this evidence. Screenshots of her communication with Derek Banks revealing unauthorized transfers, statements incriminating her, and most damningly, her own words outlining a premeditated scheme to leverage our marriage for financial stability were displayed. My lawyer read aloud her message labeling me as pathetically trusting, her confession of not intending to have a genuine marriage, and her elaborate plans to claim half my assets in a divorce she had orchestrated prior to our wedding. The judge's countenance shifted from professional composure to suppressed disdain as the evidence accumulated. Upon conclusion, the courtroom was filled with an oppressive silence. Leona's lawyer whispered fervently to her, yet she remained seated, staring fixedly at the table before her. The judge's verdict was quick and firm. "I seldom witnessed such an intentional misuse of the marriage institution," he stated. The defendant not only committed adultery, but also engaged in systematic financial fraud and perjury within this courtroom. Her requests for spousal support were not merely denied. Instead, she was ordered to reimburse every unauthorized transfer she made, with interest. Additionally, she was obligated to compensate for the legal fees and court costs. Moreover, the judge emphasized that her false accusations could have severe consequences extending beyond our divorce proceedings. He warned that filing false claims of abuse and financial misconduct is not just perjury, but also hinders resources meant for genuine victims. He decided to forward this case to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charge consideration. At the moment the gavel fell, I glanced at Leona. Her complexion was pale, her eyes wide, and for the first time since our wedding day, she looked genuinely taken aback. Unexpectedly, this wasn't part of her scheme as I exited the courtroom. A peculiar blend of feelings enveloped me. There was profound sorrow for the marriage I believed in, the woman I thought I loved, and the future I envisioned with her. Yet, there was also relief that the truth was revealed, that I wasn't delusional or overly demanding, and that I could cease feigning normality when it was so evidently lacking. The weeks that ensued unveiled aspects of Leona's past that I wished I'd known earlier. Derek wasn't her first affair. She had a pattern of exploiting relationships for financial gain, transitioning from one man to another according to her needs. Previously discreet friends emerged with their observations, recounting small indications they'd ignored, moments where something seemed amiss, but they chose not to disrupt my marriage. If there's one lesson I gleaned from this ordeal, it's this. Love devoid of respect isn't love, it's a business transaction. If someone perceives marriage as a business venture instead of a sacred bond, it's entirely justified to safeguard oneself. The saying, "my body, my choice," holds significance and validity, but using it to exploit and dominate while breaching your partner's confidence is not empowerment. It's abuse. It's crucial to value your instincts. Initially, I had a feeling that something was amiss, yet I dismissed it as paranoia or exaggeration. Sometimes, your intuition knows what your heart refuses to acknowledge. Currently, I'm reconstructing my life with the understanding that I left behind more than a dissolved marriage. I walked away from an intentional, planned deception that had the potential to cripple me financially and emotionally. To those observing who may see similarities with their relationship in this narrative, trust your judgment. Keep records of everything. Remember, authentic love does not necessitate you to surrender your self-worth, financial stability, or mental tranquility. A marriage is a union founded on sincerity, respect, and genuine warmth. If it falls short of this standard, it's not worth saving. Thanks for tuning in. See you in the next tale.